Hey everybody, welcome into the Beehive. I'm your host, TheBee at LLC, and this is where we stack precious metals like it's pollen and nectar. Our pollen is silver and our nectar is gold, preserving our wealth as honey of old. And like ancient metals, we hold our own. Today we have Ian Everard of ARK S.G.O joining us. Bring him up. Ian, welcome in. Good to see you.
And good to see you, long lived.
How are we doing today?
I'm a bit exhausted. I was up all night with a sick dog. So,
Oh yeah, no, that's no good. What is gonna come out on the better side, or how are things looking?
yeah, he's back home after an expensive trip to the vets.
Yeah.
Looks like he's going to be fine.
Well, we'll wish him the best. Bellows Forge, welcome in. Dub C, good to see you. Well, yeah, okay. Well, so everybody's saying that it's been a little slow in the gold and silver shops lately. How are you experiencing things? Has it slowed down a bit, or?
Slowed down a bit. We're still getting some new clients, which is great. Still to be growing. Obviously, always our experience is somewhat anecdotal as a fairly young business. It'll be our 5th year in August next year.
Okay.
I'm sure businesses that have been around longer probably got a better understanding, but I do talk to the wholesalers, some of them who've been in the business over 40 years. So I do try to get a catch up on what's happening industry wide, not just with our sector of it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what's new that you're hearing?
It's quiet. Lots of secondary market product available. Well, I say lots. If buying is low, it doesn't take a lot for there appear to be a depth of product available. A few weeks ago, it was drying up. It was getting harder to get secondary market gold 1 ounce coins, in BU condition. There's more available now at the moment.
Yeah. I see. So, I was just thinking about all the stuff going on with a strong dollar. There's so many different ways to look at things in the market and what's good, what's bad, and sometimes that I can get confusing. But like, do you think a strong dollar, like if you were looking at it as our country as a whole, we want a strong dollar? Yes, or is it a trade that gets tricky because for all those other aspects? So how do you excuse me, how do you view that?
Well, a strong dollar will make our products made here that we export more expensive. For currencies have got to change their currency into dollars to buy our products. That's a huge question. But looking at it selfishly from a precious metals fanatic, sound money fanatic.
Okay.
And I say that in a good way. Maybe fanatic's not quite the right word, but absolutely fundamentally convinced that sound money is the way to go. I think it gives us the privilege of using overvalued currency to buy undervalued money.
I fully agree with that. Yes.
I've given the example of Turkey a few times. I think it was about 4 years ago. I saw a report that some very smart Turkish people were selling their houses, cars, anything they could. They sold it, turned it into gold. Anything they needed, they rented. And now some of them are buying 10 houses for every house they sold. Okay. So they sold the Turkish lira when it was a lot stronger and bought gold. And now they're using their gold to go back into other real things.
Sure.
So we get the privilege of watching the monetary collapse, myth of fiat currency and its eventual demise. We have the privilege of watching it around the world. So I think when we finally see the dollar really start to lose its purchasing power, accelerate losing its purchasing power compared to gold and silver, no one will have an excuse to say they didn't see that coming. However strong the dollar is now, it is still only has a value because we say it does, the government says it does, the financial world says it does, but
right.
by declaration, which is the definition of fiat currency, it is declared it has value.
Right. Yeah. Like we were talking before, after they shut that gold window, that was one of the first things he said when he shut the gold window. The president, in his little announcement, is, "Well, we'll continue to be a forward-looking trading partner.
Yeah.
Keep on us."
Well, and he was trying. Weren't the words that Nixon used, the evil currency speculators?
Yeah, the speculators. He used
something like that. It was pretty extreme. Now, did he have a full understanding what was going on, or was he just told, if you don't shut this window down, Tricky Dicky, we'll be out of gold in about 6 months?
Yeah.
I don't know what the conversation was. I wonder if they even admit that there was a conversation before the announcement. That would be interesting, wouldn't it, if there were some documents lying around somewhere?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, anybody with a monetary mind had to be, it had to drop some jaws when they when they did that, just cutting the connection there.
Well, yes, and it was Britain that got the last gold at $35 an ounce out of America, and I think France was disappointed. I think there was a lot of delay and bluster in the run up to that, in effect, that the exchangeability had been suspended a while before the actual announcement.
Oh. Yeah, that's and so yeah, and when I say the dollar's going up or going down, I really should clarify like what I'm talking about. Generally, I'm just talking about versus other currencies.
Yeah, it's ratios, and I think the more we look at things in ratios, the easier it is to predict what's coming from how the ratios have moved in the past. And even using the monetary, a quarter of a dollar, even with this recent drop in silver price, has got $5 silver content. So a $0.25 will buy a gallon of gas almost anywhere in the US, maybe 2 gallons in Texas.
Okay.
Yeah, that has a face value of 25 cents.
Right.
So that's an inconvenient ratio that will not go away if people care to study the coinage.
Yeah.
What silver used to buy and what it buys now.
Right. Yeah, for me, once you see it, you kind of can't unsee it or something. But I guess people just aren't looking yet. And I guess my guess is that, with more, I guess I would call it pain applied, eventually they will look. But I don't know. It's interesting to see us. And so like you were just talking, and I was going to ask, is that from this point forward that you think people will start to notice that? How can you from here going for, like, the dollar has now is on top of everything. And it's not like, anything weird is, I guess we got wars breaking out, but it just looks like it's going to be a steady increase there. And I don't know how, unless people just don't understand. I guess that's the case. They just have no idea what's going on there.
Yeah, obviously, most people's transactions are done in fiat currency, and in times of crisis, people will look for the currency that appears to be losing its value at a slower rate.
Right.
And that happens to be the dollar. There's more dollars out there than any currency in all of human history in perceived purchasing power, for sure. So it is functioning as the world currency. But again, I will keep repeating it. We don't need a world reserve currency, but at the moment we need a world currency, but it doesn't have to be a reserve. So although, yes, we've had a recent drop, $80 in gold in 2 days, it is still the number 2 reserve of choice of central banks over the euro. So it is moving up the food chain. And I think it was declared, was it 5-6 years ago, a Basel Free Accord, that gold was a tier 1 asset.
Yes.
So obviously the people at the Bank of International Settlement, the BIS, know what's coming.
Yes.
And it's hidden in plain sight. Where did that come from? When you got the traditional bankers saying gold is a pet rock, it's tradition, or doesn't earn a return. You dig it out of the ground and you bury it in a vault, but yet it's overtaken the euro as a reserve.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the history of it and look at it, at least for me, logically, it is money. It is money, and it's just literally the deception that's taken over kind of the world that we're unaware of that. And I would even say that, India, just from their traditions and whatnot, they have a lot of gold just amongst their family and whatnot. So some of these other countries, and I don't know that, that's just what I've heard, but so some of these other countries are going to be possibly better off as we start to move along and keep deflating all these currencies.
Yeah, I've heard figures as much as Indian women wear 8,000 tons of gold. And for sure, in recent history, they've realized that the government can keep devaluing the currency, so they choose to store their value in gold out of mistrust of the government.
Yeah, no doubt. RLC says it's a great time to buy the pound sterling, and I don't follow the currencies that much, but does that ring true to you? Or?
I did miss my chance when we got to $1.02 would buy a pound a while back, and then it rebounded all the way to I think $1.29 to buy a pound. So that was a huge range.
Okay.
I think Britain has got some extreme problems coming financially. Neither political party has any sensible solution to reckless deficit spending. And in a way, every country that has a fiat currency and an expansionary monetary system can choose, have a collapse now or delay it, and hopefully it will affect someone else later on down the road. It was Ludwig von Mises's statement that in an expansionary fiat system, if you stop expanding, you'll get a collapse.
Yeah.
If you carry on expanding, you'll get a catastrophic collapse. So choose collapse now, which would be pretty catastrophic for most people.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, it wouldn't be for most people. Most people haven't got any spare anything anyway. So, but I guess we still got a remnant of a middle class in the US. There's still a fair amount of ownership, home ownership.
Well, that's it's interesting that since we're on that that David Rogers Webb book, The Great Taking, he was on a couple other channels, and I caught some of his info on like Daniela Cambone, and he was saying that they've got a bill now introduced that in a few different states, it sounds like they're kind of possibly rallying behind him, and even the state pushing back kind of against the banking oligarchy or whatever, however you'd like to look at that. So that that might be interesting as well. When
I first saw that title, I'm of the opinion and understanding that the taking has happened. We've had so much volatility, so much destruction of lower income levels. I just saw an article this afternoon that the top 1% of the population own 10 times more or 12 times more shares than the bottom 50%.
Yeah.
That's, so wealth has moved upwards. So I think the bulk of the taking has been done. If you're an American now, that the privilege of living in this incredible country, and you're paycheck to paycheck, and yet you are working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, you've been taken. It's like your effort, your life's output has been taken. And if you're an American who has coming up to retirement and has got financial instruments that are expected to pay for 30 or 40 years of retirement, medical cares, holidays, legacy, you've been taken, because it can't and it won't do that.
Well, see, I agree with that, and it's like you're saying, there's two ways to default here, but if the system, if suddenly something gets tripped and overnight, things start crashing, that's kind of where the David Rogers Webb was saying everything flows right into their hands per their legal framework. Yeah. But if we don't have a tripwire hit, then we're gonna carry on anyway, and we're already slowly, like you're saying, it's already, if it continues at this pace, it's already being sucked out, and will completely
exactly. Most of it is in their hands already.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. So he's working on that level of if the wire gets tripped, suddenly won't all fall just instantly into their hands, where there can be no argument. But I agree, even at where we're at and continuing forward in our trajectory, our values in our 401ks or our houses, and this is all getting so diminished that before long it's not going to matter anyway. So yeah.
Because whilst you've got property taxes to pay or a mortgage to pay, we could end up into all sorts of schemes to try and deprive people of their property. And if we rewind back in history to 1746, I think was the year, the British Crown and Parliament, probably under the control of the bankers, even in those days, started withdrawing the currency from the colonies, the American colonies. And what that meant was that people who were wealthy and had good businesses owed tax, but they had to pay it in the currency. But they removed the currency, so there wasn't enough currency there. And they were unable to pay their taxes with the correct coin, and they were foreclosed on. I mean, that could happen now, couldn't it? Can if we go into, or when we go into the full digital dollar system, what if they delay you paying your property taxes? Oh, whoops, now you're behind in your property taxes and you get foreclosed on.
Right.
Or what if they say, well, your mortgage, they say, actually this month you can't pay all of your mortgage, even though you have got the dollars in your digital account. All sorts of strings could be pulled in unimaginable, despicable ways to further to complete the great taking. But I think the bulk has been done. So few people will be prepared for what's coming.
The rest of what's
they've been taken. They will enter into practical indentured servitude, serfdom.
Yeah. Well, that's been my uneased nerves thought pattern for a
Yeah.
while anyway.
And we think we're invincible. We think we've developed a level of society and we can't go backwards or sideways. But I think we're definitely going backwards. This transfer of wealth is not going to stop. The only way to protect yourself personally, I think, is intangible assets.
Yeah, though that's what I found to be the best tool available anyway that I could see. So yeah, since we're kind of on this, and like I was saying, the dollar is strong. Is that good or bad? And it depends on how you look at it. And,
I mean, it isn't strong over the term. We've had the comparison. If you pull up the chart of all time of the DXY, it's not particularly strong at the moment. It's been a lot stronger.
Yeah.
You know, in fact, it was there was a meeting, the Plaza Accord was held, and it was decided to devalue the dollar overnight by 15%. So I guess that's sort of recency bias. If we see it rising over a few days, a few percent, it seems significant. But unless you're a currency trader, it's I guess sort of going back to stacking, the advantage it gives us is it appears to suppress the dollar price of silver and gold, and that's what the price we pay. You know, spot plus premium is priced in a overvalued dollar.
Yeah, no, for us, it's definitely good. The longer they can keep, once, you know, if you're a stacker, then yeah, the longer they can kick the thing down the road, the better off it is for us in that sense. But if you're not, you know, just if you're a country and you're looking at countries, that's kind of a question that I still have. And to take it back.
Yeah, I mean the natural effect of a strong currency is your exports become expensive, so you export less, your imports get cheaper, so you import more. And in a traditional monetary system, then your trade deficit means you run out of gold. It's like, because when you run out of gold, you can't import anymore because gold is a means of payment. So then your strength, your currency would fall if we were still linked on a gold standard. So yes, the machinations of it all, I do admit I don't really grasp all of the big nuances.
So like for me, and I don't know, this is something I want to ask you, Ian, because we grew up in different, you know, you grew up over in England,
yeah.
And so, you know, we probably, you know, I have tried some different views, but for me, the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness, and you know, it says a lot right there to me, and I was just thinking about that, and I remember talking to you, and at one point you mentioned how you were really happy when you touched the ground here in the States. And so I just kind of wanted to go back there a little bit and ask, you know, if you, growing up where you grew up, how did you feel about their system? And how did you look at our system? Do you like the Constitution and like what our basis is, or where we've got to now? Or like, can you explain, like, when you got it, why were you happy to get here? And you know, if you had your ideals from what you experienced over there and then seeing over here, like what are some of the things that you see there if you had your ideals about setting things up, or if you have an opinion there?
Oh wow, okay. You want me to write a book now?
Yeah, basically.
So yeah, I mean, the Constitution was meant to prevent a feudal system, a monarchy, a dictatorship arising. Yet by stealth, steadily over the centuries, the financial elites, these leading financiers that Montague Norman called them in 1924, have built a theocracy where the money men make the decisions. Who the money men decide who's in power, who stays in power, who wins, loses, who lives and dies, even. You know, and you've got huge companies. I mean, United Healthcare is obviously being in the news for the reasons of their CEO being murdered. But you've got these big medical companies that every minute they decide who lives and who dies. So that wasn't the intent of the Constitution, was it? But a Constitution was, as well, it was never meant to be based on communism or socialism or Marxism or equal outcomes. It was never meant to be that either. But I do think it was supposed to be trying to level the playing field. And to a certain extent, if you think back when there was only a few million people, few million Europeans landing on these, you know, on the East Coast with the huge resources as they traveled across the land, there was that golden era of expansion because this was seemingly endless lumber and land and hunting and resources. And we still are an extremely rich nation that way. Some of the best, if not the best, farmland in the world, the most navigable waterways for economical moving of agricultural products, no danger of being invaded, although to a certain extent we have been invaded silently. Now I'm sort of drifting back to the point, so the sort of constitution and liberty. So yeah, I mean, in a country this vast and with this population, there is much more opportunities than in a smaller country, for sure.
Yeah, for sure, right?
But I think the American dream is I think it's less accessible, and it's been made less accessible by the upwards movement of wealth. Because it does seem a lot of these wealthy people are hoarding it. They're not using it. They're not investing in their community in a big way.
Yeah,
it's almost like a race to see who can have $1 trillion.
Yeah,
you know, like $1 billion is not enough anymore. And to me, that is not only destructive to the country; it's destructive to those individuals as well. But yes, I mean, my wife and myself have been very blessed moving here. We were able to buy property at a fraction of what it's costs now. And is that an accident of circumstances?
Good timing, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't my timing.
Right.
I was actually quite happy in the UK. Actually, I think you have to ask me another question to get me back on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you know, and two, when you're, you know, I'm just kind of, you know, I get onto this subject of money, and then it leads me into, you know, how to run a country and everything. So this is all way over my head, you know. But
well, it's a natural balance, isn't it? If the money is, if your money of the country, the nation, is actually in physical metal, it's much harder to cheat, isn't it?
For sure.
It's almost impossible to debase. I mean, the only way you can introduce more currency is to mine it and mint it.
Yeah.
Or produce goods and services and exchange it abroad and bring in more gold and silver. So it meant a lot less volatility. But I think the volatility is desired by the financial elites because they seem to be able to benefit whether things are going up or down. They're able to benefit from it because they can make very much longer term decisions than most of us can.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, most of us are trying to survive, pay the bills, get a bit saved, leave a legacy for our children. You know, lots. That's what most of people are that's going to be the sum of their achievement.
Yeah.
So, but if you've got millions or billions slopping around, you can play a much longer game. Although, having said that, once you've worked out what is money, we are playing the longer game. Most of us who own silver, we haven't bought it to make a gain in 2, 3, 4, even 5 or 10 years. We've bought it to maintain purchasing power for maybe 10, 20, 30 years ahead.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I looking at these ancient coins as well and looking back through history and thinking about the monetary system. One thing that has rang true to me or is here lately is that, you know, looking back over those thousands of years and pulling out a world map and looking at things. I mean, the battle is still raging to this day. I mean, we just saw what happened in Syria.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then I was thinking about, you know, I'm looking into these ancient coins and the ancient, the gods that were on the coins and thinking back about what just happened with ISIS. And that name that they picked, ISIS, you have to wonder about that, you know. You know, are they doing this as a torture? And what did they do? They went and they live streamed them destroying some ancient artifacts, basically.
Yeah.
And you know, I was thinking about that, and then applying it to history. And you know, you see these other great leaders, Alexander the Great or whatever. You know, he chose to kind of really destroy one town as a revenge for them coming and destroying one of his towns earlier on under his father's reign. And, you know, it's just, you know, was that just a torture tactic for someone, you know, to show that, look, here, we're going to live stream us destroying your history here, you know? And it's amazing to me that you know, the same, we're not that much changed from thousands of years ago.
No, and in our last war in Iraq, wasn't the one of the major US military bases was on top of the ancient remains of Babylon.
Yeah. Yep.
And a lot of archaeological history is just trashed with a huge US Army base just bulldozed on top of it. So, but yeah, I mean, that's, I guess, the history of humanity, humans being inhuman to humans, isn't it? It's a salutary lesson, isn't it? And the very people doing the damage, or the people who appear to have the power to do that, they themselves are getting destroyed by being destroyers.
Yeah.
So it's a trap.
I just noticed that. I was kind of thinking about that and looking at it. Kind of makes you sick to the stomach to realize that this thing is still going on in that same manner. And so yeah. And then so with what's happening over there right now, so that you know, and that kind of leads me back to our founding documents and what I was getting to earlier. You know, in the Constitution, it says right off there, you know, we should just stick to ourselves, you know, and you know, within our borders, we don't need to have huge navies all around the world. It said we don't, you know, we shouldn't even have anything out unless we're getting invaded. If we're getting invaded, then everybody on board.
How would World War I and World War II have played out? I guess if America hadn't got involved, did the founding fathers anticipate the evil such as Hitler rising up to destroy whole people groups and take over whole nations and Nazify them? Did they even perceive that was a possibility? So, but yeah, the problem is when you become the world's policeman, either willingly or reluctantly, or a combination of both, that power will get abused.
And probably suck it out. Like, isn't it kind of common knowledge that when you start your empire gets so spread abroad, trying to control all types of little quails in all other areas, you start getting sucked dry, and you lose some of your power overall. You know, people start working together to try to get around. I mean, you see the BRICS. I know, you know, might not get anywhere, but at least the idea behind it was trying to be launched. You know, I mean, you can see it can't be said that there wasn't an effort to get away from it, you know, obviously. So
yes, but only to something just as crappy or more crappy. It's like,
sure. But I mean, you know, it's that point that what I'm looking at is, you know, because the same thing happened in Rome, right? Or it was, from what I've been told, that they got, you know, so widespread that and they had to debase to try to control it and pay more troops, and
yeah,
and you know, that's what supposedly, from what I understand, contributed to their downfall. And I have heard, at least from other people, that is a telltale sign, you know, when you get to that point.
it would seem that these United States are retreating from being the world's policeman. It would seem that we're not going to patrol the world's oceans and allow free trade. From what I understand, that was a decision to prevent another world war, that America would do that and allow any country that could produce anything to be able to produce it and sell it anywhere else in the world without having to have their own navy to enable them to safely deliver that product. And to a certain extent, the world has been quite a peaceful place, even as bad as it does seem historically.
Yeah.
You know, we haven't personally lived through the world wars. You know, and you look back through the biblical record of wars in the Bible, I mean, horrific. And you look back through the history of Asia, you know, the ebbs and flows of warring peoples just riding horses through and destroying anything in their sight. You know, so personally, unless you've served in the US military, none of us have experienced that, have we?
No,
we haven't experienced, you know, I mean, yes, I mean, I guess some people in cities have got fear of gang violence. I'm sure even in some parts of Denver, there's probably extreme gang violence that if you get caught up in that, you're in a whole lot of trouble. Sure. But generally, we don't fear the threat of being attacked or murdered, do we? I maybe because I live in a quiet mountain town, I'm out of touch with how a lot of Americans live. That's like,
no, I mean, no, I think, you know, I think that as for the most part, you know, we're a country of law and order. Now, I would say the last 10 years, it seems like a lot of that's been trying to be reinvented or thrown off, or there's been a lot of volatility in that area of late. Yeah. So
Mr. Minnesota made a good comment there. I do apologize. I'm not able to comment with the way this is set up. Can you pull that up?
Yep.
And this is true. I mean, the warring factors were financed by the world financiers, and it does prolong the war. I mean, it looks like what's happening with Russia's brutal attack on Ukraine, that Russia's running out of money. They can't borrow it. They've got little option to tax it. I don't think Putin or the oligarchs are going to give up their own wealth to fund Putin's war. Now, if Western bankers started supplying Putin with loans and advances on future production of gold and platinum and minerals out of the Urals, the war could be extended. So, but yeah, that's a really good point. World War II was financed, both sides were financed by the same people, by the same institutions.
We'll see. Yeah, and that's a very interesting that you say that both sides were, because I see that a lot of times, and I kind of nervous to bring that up, but that's what I see. I see it kind of both sides. I mean, it seems to be run from up top, and that makes it to look like, oh, it's just this side that's all bad, but you see things on them playing both sides of things.
Yeah.
So they're funny, and like with ISIS, we were just talking about that. Comes to find out, we pretty much had a lot to do with setting some of those things up, and with what's going on over there right now. So
yeah, I mean, my enemy's enemy is my friend. Yeah. So.
And like Welchko here is saying, Rome, Ottoman, Dutch speak Spanish, English, and now America all did the same crap to destroy an empire as the bankers walk away with the spoils. And I've been seeing, and like the Soleri report, I don't know if any of you guys have seen that, but she talks about, how the money is just leaving. And that was 3 or 4 years ago. And I mean, that's what it looks like to me. They're kicking the legs out from under the table. They're flowing the money out elsewhere, or at least these attempts are being made. So yeah, it's getting very interesting, very hectic, and then that leads me into these questions of like, what should a country be? And so I like, for me, I like a lot of the things that are said in our founding documents. The as long as you're not hurting someone else, you have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that goes a long way with.
Except that I think it does need addressing, and I never noticed this till I heard somebody point it out. We the people meant the founding fathers, who were white men.
I've heard that, yeah.
It's like, so that excluded women, and it excluded people with the wrong skin color.
We'll see that,
and it excluded poor people.
Yeah, and you have to watch for that trick.
We do, yeah.
Speaking, they love that. Well,
and for all of its beauty and its careful construction, it is a human document, and therefore it's going to have its flaws. And the Bible clearly tells us the human heart is wicked. It's like there's no getting around it. Even the best of us, the best of men and women, they have potential for evil. So, and I think it's showing up more and more now. I think evil has less restraint, and bad things have been called good, and good things have been called bad, and truth has become subjective. And an opinion equals a truth now. So,
and I see that, and I wonder, like, because from my understanding of the republic, which we were supposedly supposed to be when we were set up, is that the government was simply there to enforce our rights. So they were just there to make sure no one else encroached upon our rights, basically.
So they were supposed to just interpret or maybe just enforce the Constitution, I guess. And
exactly, if someone stole from you, well, then you hold a court of jury of your peers.
You have recourse, yeah.
And that's another thing that's went away, where it's supposed to be a jury of your peers, and that really gets messed with a lot as well. But that's another story. But yeah, so and that's as these countries rise and fall, and they stamp out their area, and they set up their governing system. I guess that's one of the hugest topics, I suppose, of the world, is how you're supposed to set up your government.
We've got a couple of really good comments come up there. Can we do them one at a time? Space Miner and the Cranky Stacker.
This one that says, what are the most basic elements?
So again, if you believe the Bible is a historic document and a guide, way back in Genesis, it describes gold as money and tells us to trade with it. And if you mention gold as money, well, by definition, I would say that silver is fractional gold. It's the change. It's the smaller units of value. So the base, I think the fundamental principle of money should be a store of value. That helps the poorest. It helps the, now I'm not saying this condescendingly in any way. It helps the simple-minded, the people with less ability to prosper in business for whatever reasons. At least whatever they manage to earn should be able to store its value without them having to gamble it or give it to the financial system to gamble on their behalf. So I think that really needs to be, money is not money unless it stores value.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. Yeah,
now, you know, there's other definitions. I think there's 5 common. It's universally acceptable, it's portable, divisible, fungible. So at the moment, gold and silver are not universally accepted, so they can't fulfill the full definition of money. So therefore, sort of swinging back around to what I said about world reserve currency, what we use as money by default now has to be a hybrid. So most of us get paid in dollars, earn in dollars, inherit in dollars, or get benefits in dollars, or however we, and then we use those dollars to purchase goods or services. So the dollar works as currency, but it's not money. It can't be money because it doesn't store value. So I think that's the fundamental. I think I partly answered Space Miner's point there. And then I don't know if you can go back. There was another comment.
Cranky right below it.
Yeah. Yes, I would agree there was some divine inspiration in there, but it's still a human document. It's not in. I would have trouble saying that it is perfect and complete, and it's only our interpretation of it that is flawed. I don't. So there's a difference between, in my opinion, this is my opinion, there's a difference between the canon of scripture and the Constitution. And this is why I think it was a terrible mistake to bind the Constitution and other documents together with a Bible. I think personally the Bible stands above anything. You know, I believe it to be the inspired word of God. And yes, we could debate, people can debate and do debate and should debate about the interpretation and the translations and the errors that can come in through that. So yes, I agree that it was divinely inspired, but that doesn't make it divinely perfect.
Yeah, and
if it was divinely perfect, there would be no amendments to it, would there?
Well, that's hard to, you know, it's hard to say on both sides of that. I mean, you always got to watch out for the devil in the details, right? Like we were saying, was that like I said, you know, that's why I brought it up. I like a lot of the things that it says that sounds right, but were they actually referring to we the people as on the board of our little group here and not the people of the, you know, the countryside? You know, so sometimes they do this type of thing to make it appear like it's for you, when in actuality, when you get down, well, we'll go look at David Rogers Webb's book. I mean, this is not a thing that's not being done, and even within our court system, I don't really agree with the whole we need to speak in another language to have a fair trial type of thing. You know, that's ridiculous. Mine is thoughts.
We've pretty moved away from a fair legal system, because if you're wealthy, you can sue anybody at any time for anything, and if they can't afford to defend themselves, they have to roll over.
Well, speaking of which, do you know about the patent trolls? Have you heard of those?
No.
So there's a good video out on it. I should have got the name of it, but it's so. These lawyers found a way to sue basically anybody, any business that's doing fairly well that can probably pay some fees.
Right.
And so they'll sue them and they'll say, oh, you used a button on your iPhone that we have a patent on.
Yeah.
And then for it to go to court, they will just delay it and fees after fees after fees, so you'll just settle with them.
You'll just settle because it's a financial decision. It's cheaper to pay than to defend.
Yeah, and it's just they have it set up in a way where they're not getting hurt. You know, they start up an LLC, a shell corporation, and they sue through them so that they can't get hurt. And I mean, so just you know, horrible schemes get set up like this when you get
that obviously the legal system has partly become corrupted. That if there are lawyers that will do that,
exactly.
I mean, if they understand all the nuances, they fully know well what they are doing.
Yes.
And I think, and it's a frivolous. I guess there's some defense that a judge could say this is a frivolous charge, a frivolous claim, and an award costs against the litigious party. So we are relying more and more on wise judges, aren't we? Then and independent, apolitical, not looking at. They seem to be fairly few and far between now, don't they? Judges that are full of wisdom and discretion and understanding of the law.
That actually want to do righteousness. Yeah. So we got. Let's see.
And that's probably why the Bible advises us: if you get taken to court, settle on the way.
Right. Yeah.
Which sort of goes back around to I'll just pay them off. I don't know, that it's sort of, that doesn't always seem to make sense to me. But I do know if it's something I don't understand or it doesn't seem right to me in the Bible, the error is in me, not in the scripture.
All right. Well, I got a package here. I got to add a general here. So I started stacking these Commander series. I'm going to open that up. But it just kind of gets you back to, how your society is supposed to be in the first place. And that can be a hard thing. We're so far off of our base at this point, like Space Miner was saying before. What do we do to save what we have left is kind of the thing. I like that David Rogers Webb. I should have got his info, but I think that's a good start, is just that the states be made aware that, look, there is a hand that's wrapping around everything, and it's not good for even those people that are in the state right there. They're, for everybody needs to see that and realize, okay, this isn't really good for anybody, as a nation. But I think, in my opinion, I think that they've been trying to knock us out as a power source in the global system. Going forward, I just in my opinion, they're pulling the money out, as the Solari report says, and they're done with us being a powerhouse, and they're trying to move into their new system. And so, that's what's nerve-wracking to me, is, are we just moving right into that system freely? Is this stuff that's going on backfiring? Are we moving forward or backwards? Sometimes it's kind of hard to tell.
Well, we're definitely moving backwards as we enter into a complete digital system. I mean, that will give near absolute power to the people that control it. That is definitely a backward step.
So do you kind of agree with me? If I was to point out one of the biggest thing coming down that I see coming down the pike that's going to cause the most damage is the digital ID. Is that an agreement that you have?
Yeah. And I don't know. Have you seen that? I can't even remember what it's called. There's I think they call it an orb that takes an iris scan
Yep. Yeah, I have seen that.
And he's like, I saw that, and I saw this documentary. It was 2 years old, and 1/3 of people in Buenos Aires had taken this scan.
2/3, you say?
These young people were queuing up, staring into this, getting there. And the whole thing, it was being sold as Identify Human, I think the project was called. So to build a database, and obviously that's going to get tied to a world currency. It is coming.
Yeah. So to me, and maybe you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but to me, I agree. That is the biggest threat coming down the pike. And I think so many people would actually agree with, like, a large segment of society would agree with that. They don't want that. But I also feel like all of us think that there's not, like, how do we get out of that? Are people going to fight back? Because anytime I kind of mention it, like I'm trying to fight back in all these little ways, I don't see anyone saying, "Oh, me too, I fight back too." No, most people are just like, "Yeah, that's coming,"
Yeah.
So you don't answer if you don't want to.
I'm just trying to construct something that's going to be useful to people listening. So the ideal would be to be self-sufficient off-grid.
Yeah.
But the danger then is, you become a hermit, you become isolated, and you go crazy, or in my case, crazier. So right. It's not healthy. I mean, you see, I have not watched any for a long time, but maybe 10, 15 years ago, I'd watched documentaries on these people that would build their little fortress in the middle of a wilderness. And they'd have like 1 million rounds of ammo and 200 years of food and everything they could survive for 1,000 years. Are they still sitting there waiting for the end of the world? And I remember my dad growing up thinking about building a nuclear shelter in the backyard.
Yeah,
we had a pretty big backyard compared to most people that are, my peers, and we could have built it on our own, but what good does that really do you? But I think to keep developing skills and keep learning and keep your critical thinking skills sharp, because there's so much more. If we think we've seen deception, there's so much more on the way.
More coming, yeah.
There's so much more deception on the way, and a lot of it is to cause division. So practical things, learning to grow, learning to fix things, learning a craft. I think you're pretty handy on the saw table, aren't you? And you're learning woodwork skills. Now we can't all do that, but I would have thought whatever circumstance someone is in, you can learn a craft or an art or cooking or growing. And those things bring greater fulfillment, I think, than expensive hobbies, for sure.
Yeah.
And that sort of was what happened in communist Czechoslovakia. Václav Havel wrote about it in a book about parallel societies, that people would get together and do simple stuff and enjoy it and build relationship and friendships and trust in a support group. And in the end, it became more meaningful than the communist oppression that they were under. And it didn't remove them from that oppression, but it became more meaningful. But it didn't control them in a way it could have done. So I think really what we're going with, the financial repression that's coming, that's part of it. It's, well, what are we going to do with our new increased purchasing power for those that have managed to store up some silver?
Yeah.
And that's it's a great responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting here in Colorado. I guess there is they reinforced or reinstated, I don't know what you would say, but there is some people who didn't like that a company wasn't taking cash in Colorado, And so they said, isn't this legal tender? Don't you have to take it? And then a judge said, yes, it's, so they have to take it. So there's certain people, like you can go to a shop in Colorado, and if they don't take cash, you can have there's a page where you can fill out a paperwork to have sent to this company to make them fall in line and take cash. Which is interesting because, like, I know the last time I went there, the Western National Stock Show here in Denver, that whole thing didn't take cash.
Right.
So I wonder if you could enforce that one on them. That'd be interesting to find out. But
yeah, that's interesting because I know in England, in Britain, a merchant is not obliged to sell anything to anybody, and you could pick up something in a store and take it to the checkout, and they could say, actually, we're not selling that to you today. Go away, please.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't occur in Britain.
Well, but that's a little bit different and it may well not in Britain, but I think that's a little different though, is where you're saying, you're not accepting a certain currency as opposed to not actually selling anything to you. But yeah.
But I'm still of the opinion that cash is, it's nearly gone away. It is going away. It won't be compatible with the new digital dollar.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I agree, and it's interesting to me because I see someone who sees, like, I think they're trying to do good when they say, look, this company's not taking cash. We need to make them take cash because if they take cash, we're not going to go to a cashless system.
Nah.
That's kind of the thing that I seem to see is pretty much even the people in our side don't think that that's something that's a thing. So it's like everybody's pretty much on board with jumping into the new system, from what I can tell. So I guess here we go.
It's and ironically, it'll be necessary to prop up society for a while longer as well. And I've said this before. We will have tiers, different types of dollar. We'll have the digital dollar, the new digital dollar, and we'll have old dollars, which will be physical coin and note, and it will be certain amounts in certain accounts will stay as old dollars. So we'll have a multi-tier dollar for a while. That's interesting there. Welco services, only about 2% is in cash. I've heard different figures. Total amount of what they call vault cash, physical cash, is about $2 trillion. So it's a tiny amount.
Sure. Well, of course, there doesn't have to be, an equal amount of cash to equal your digits or whatever. But it's.
Well, it should be. If there was, it'd be a bit more inconvenient, wouldn't it? Just creating an extra $1 trillion out of. Well, not out of nowhere, because it's created by stealing value from all existing dollars. But if they had to create that physically, at least at some point, the warehouses would be obviously humongous, wouldn't they, with trillions and trillions of dollars.
That's why it doesn't make any sense. All you need is enough to, transact in society with most, like you say, with most low folk. So it's even less than everyone needs. So, yeah. All right, well, we are past our hour, so I suppose we should wind this down. But so I got my Caesar coin. Now they also put out another debasement coin showing, half alive and then half skeleton.
Yeah,
debasement. I kind of like that that minting.
There you go. I've got. This might interest you. This is I don't know if that or camera will show that.
Yep.
My light's not very good.
Oh yeah, those are awesome. That's a really nice one too. Woo-hoo.
That's an MS61.
That's so cool. And that's where our dollar sign came from, was off that front pillar there, huh?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Very nice coin. What would something like that go for?
I think that's about. I think my dealer, he sold it to me for a lot less. He said that's about $4,000 in a MS-60. Yeah, wow. There's just so few around in that grade.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. Well, what do you got any good specials you want to leave us with as we
always? I mean, 1 ounce rounds, 89 cents premium. We've got the St. Helena Rose Crown Guineas for $1.45. Britannia's $2.50. Yeah, pretty well. Everything is really low premiums at the moment, apart from Eagles have edged up just a little bit. But yeah, we got plenty of 10 ounce bars, 1 ounce rounds, Britannias, Maples, you name it.
Cool. How is what's been going on with the Osmium? Any good updates there? Anything you want to mention?
Yeah, no, it's been good. The repercussions, that's not the right word. Following on from New Orleans Investment Conference, yeah, Nick Bermuda's down in San Diego. He's getting some more designers made by his goldsmith. And his friend Roger is building a website so all American producers of Osmium jewelry can put them on one website.
Nice.
So that will enable people to look at made in America by Americans for Americans Osmium jewelry. Cool. So that's exciting.
Yeah. Good deal. How about your hafnium and rhenium?
Yeah, the rhenium is going well. Getting all the information together to produce a document to send out to our client base. Yeah, just the supply is getting tighter and tighter, and the consumption is just increasing. And with all of this military expansionism and I don't know, did you see what Israel did in Syria? They did over 300 attacks on Syrian jet fighters, helicopters, missile bases, you name it.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So that's all equipment that will potentially be replaced, and it will need a whole lot more rhenium. So yeah, it's fascinating how scarce it is, and yet how essential it is in several industries now.
Huh. Yeah, that is interesting. All right, very cool. Well, all right, I think we will wind it down for this one. Thank you all so much out there in chat for hanging out with us. Tooly, good to see you. 3D Woodworks, Silverboy Blues, Space Miner, JM Unleashed. Good to have you here hanging out with us. SGO Services, thanks for hanging with us. And all right, Ian, well, if you got anything else you want to drop, go ahead. Otherwise, we will bring you back here in another week or two and see what's new.
No, I guess we just got to keep plugging away and keep plodding on, do what we can do in the sphere of our influence.
Yep.
It's going to be an interesting year next year. Not interesting good. It's like interesting. So
yeah. All right, cool. Well, we'll get you back. Look forward to having you back. Everybody out there in chat, thank you so much for hanging out, and we will be back soon with something new. We will catch you guys on the next one.